Why is this desk a mess? Oh well. Let's do a deck tech. Goggles. And take 3. How's it going, guys? Welcome to my workshop. I'm the Jank mechanologist. I didn't get it backwards this time. I still stuttered a bit. This is different. I'm actually in front of a camera and it's really weird, but I think this will add a bit more personality to the video, and everyone else does it, so why not? Today I have a bit of a deck tech for you guys today. This deck is actually a deck I made for fun, but the story behind it is a little interesting. I was making a Maxx Nitro deck, and I was putting jump starts in my deck. While I was doing that, I stopped and I asked myself, why would I put this in my deck if I don't have zipper hit in my deck? Well, it turns out the answer is because this card costs 2, but it also costs 1. And while a Maxx Nitro, that doesn't mean much, in a deck with, say, a certain generic attack reaction or a pair of certain gloves, this is actually pretty good jank technique here. So on Twitter, I posted the idea about putting Pummel in -IO, and add that together, and you have Pummeled Pummeled with data. This crazy jank idea I had for a fun deck that is more fun to play than it should be. I'm going to start off by saying, if you're here because you're hoping for some kind of tournament winning deck, or, I don't know, you want to smash your armory, you're at the wrong place. This deck is 100% for fun. It might win an armory. It's not winning an RTN. It's not winning a Pro Quest. If it does, I'll be surprised, to be honest. But I did not design this deck with that in mind. This deck is 100% for the person who doesn't play Mechanologist or hasn't played Flesh and Blood, but wants an affordable way to get into the game, ignoring the Arcanite Skullcap, Fendel Spring Tunic, and Adaptive Plating. Those aren't important. Let's get into it. Go. For this deck, we're running -IO. -IO is one of 2 mechanologists that can actually use generic cards in their deck and not have too many problems. The other hero being Teklovasin, but that's mostly just because he doesn't boost that much. -IO has the ability of, you may look at the top card of your deck at any time, which is really good if you're boosting cards away. Also, once per turn, you may play a Mechanologist item with cost 0 or 1 from the top of your deck as though it were an instant. It costs an additional 1 to play. Really good ability. Only downside is -IO has less health than most heroes at 36. For our equipment, we're running Achilles Accelerator. Achilles Accelerator is easily the best leg equipment in the game, at least for Mechanologist. At an instant, you can destroy it to gain 1 action point. You can only activate it if you boosted, and it has Arcane Barrier 1. The only downside, it doesn't block, but that action point will come in handy. We're going to run Arcanite Skullcap, though you could replace this with anything else. I think Arcanite Skullcap is the better one to use, just because with a lower starting health, you could have this thing block for 2+1, versus Crown of Providence is just 2, and the budget equipment's once blocking for 1 or 2. It also has Arcane Barrier 3, but we're really not going to use that unless we're up against Kano. But there's better options. We're running Fendel Spring Tunic. This is just because it's the best one to run. You could run budget and go Carton Crossstrap, which is not a bad idea. You can go Teklo Foundry Heart, which is really cheap right now. Fendel Spring Tunic is just the best one to use because you gain a resource every 4 turns. Not bad. It also blocks for 1. Goliath Gauntlet is there because we're going to focus on 2 cost cards. We're pretty much playing Brute, but with the ability to go wide. Goliath Gauntlet says destroy it. Your next attack that costs 2 or greater gets +2. And this focuses on the cost of the card, not how much you paid for it. Keep that in mind. For our weapon, we're running Symbiosis Shot. You could run Pistol. I think Symbiosis Shot's a little better just because it attacks for free, and we have enough items in our deck to put steam counters onto it. Moving on to the deck, we're running Backup Protocol Red, 2 copies, Backup Protocol Red, crank item. At the cost of 2, destroy this, grab a red attack action card from your graveyard, put it in your hand. Really good, especially if you want to surprise your opponent. You say you have a blue card in hand, pitch that into this, get your red jumpstart back. Because you have a hyperdriver, use that last resource to attack with it, gain resources back from hyperdrivers, etc., etc. We're running Bullbar just because Bullbar has overpower when it attacks with hyperdrivers. Pretty good card. It's going to be one of your heavy hitters, pun intended, for this deck. Gas Up, I'm not sure on. I put it in because we are still boosting, and we can boost away hyperdrivers. This can bring it back at the cost of 1, and it gives our next attack we boost +4, which all sounds good, but the fact that it blocks for 2 is kind of iffy. But we'll run it anyways. We'll see. High Octane. This one is in there because it's useful, but you could easily replace it with something else. The cost of 1, draw a card, and whenever you boost a card this turn, gain 1 action point. This helps stop us from ruining our boost strategy. Say if we boost a Pummel away, and the air vent is blowing, so I'm going to wait a few minutes and start recording again in a bit. Alright, the vent stopped blowing. I have a little air vent behind me, but the break gave me a chance to look at the camera and realize I need to stop slouching. Anyways, High Octane. We're running this because we could boost a generic away and still keep going wide. And we could go crazy and do the whole pistol strategy if we wanted to with it. We're running 6 copies of Hyperdriver, red and yellow. We want as many Steam counters on Hyperdrivers as possible, and we want enough Hyperdrivers to be able to do crazy stuff with our cards. That's really it. No, we don't run the blues. You could run the blues if you wanted to, but the fact that they only have 1 Steam counter often leads to them being destroyed. Later on in the deck, we'll see why we could run them. But for now, just 3. We're running 6. We're running 6 copies of Jumpstart, red and yellow. This is really the core of the deck. The whole reason this deck exists is because of this card. At the cost of 2, attack for 5 has boost, but if you control a Hyperdriver, this costs 1. And you don't have to boost to get that bonus. You can attack with it and not boost. Say you have a Quicken token or something, or you just want to pummel and pass turn. We're running Mini Force Field. This is just here because we want to stay alive. We have a lower health total, and we have items in our deck that could prevent us from blocking when we need to. This is Wars for 4. At the best of times, Wars for 3 if we play and crank it. Not a bad card to have to keep yourself alive. You could replace it with the other card, Dissolving Shield, but I think Mini Force Field's a little bit better. 6 copies of Pummel, Pummel Red and Pummel Yellow. We're not running Pummel Blue because the blue Pummel doesn't give us enough benefits compared to the red and yellow ones. Red Pummel gives your attacks +4, yellow +3. Pummel says that if you have an attack action card with cost 2 or greater, it gets +4, and if it hits the defending hero, discards a card. Jumpstart is a 2-cost card whether you pay 1 or 2, meaning that it's a Pummel target. And thus the whole reason for this deck. Recharge is here because it keeps our Hyperdrivers alive, and it gives our next attack +4. Combine this with Jumpstart, and you have a Jumpstart for 9, which could pummel, so 9 +4, pretty good. Seek Horizon, I'm not sure on. So the problem I ran into in testing was that I would have hands full of items, or I'd have a generic card on top of my deck, and I can't boost and go wide. One of my ideas was to put Seek Horizon in the deck as a way to modify the top of my deck without running into too much problems. This also gets items out of your hand, so you can play it at instant speed and crank them for more action points. And it attacks for 4, which is a good break point. Downsides being it only blocks for 2, and it is generic. We'll see. Zoom in is optional. I'm running it because of the opt. Even if you boosted it as your first attack, you can still opt one card. And that's it. It's a 2 for 5, block 3 with boost. Moving on to the yellows and red and blues. We're running 6 copies of Big Bertha, yellow and blue. We really only want them there to boost them away. That gives our hyperdrivers more time on the field, and really it's just there as an optional target. Let's say you have it in your hand, you can use it as an optional target for pummeling. It's not the optimal one. They're more for pitching and blocking and boosting. Crankshaft, same thing, only it costs 2. Pitching, blocking, boosting. We're not running the reds because we just want the resources from these. However, you could run the reds. Spark of Genius, we're running 3 copies. We have enough items. We want to find them when we need them, especially the hyperdrivers. And if you wanted to, you could find, say, mini force field and save yourself a next turn. Hyper Scrapper. This is the reason why I considered running the blue hyperdrivers. Hyper Scrapper is a 0 for 2 or 3 for 5 attack action that if you banish 3 hyperdrivers or more, it gets go again and you gain 6 resources, which is pretty good. I've never pulled it off though. Maybe you will, who knows. Steel Straight Hoons. So I decided it is my mission to run this card in as many decks as possible. It's not a bad card. It's not bad. It's definitely short of being great. And I could talk a whole video about how this card is so close to being great, but it's just short that one thing. But that's not this video. This is here because it costs 3. It's a pummel target, and we could block for 4. That's really all it's there for. T-Bone Blue, it's mostly there for pitching. It's a blue block 3, but you can also use it to destroy your opponent's equipment if they aren't careful. And Teklo Core. Teklo Core is the dash item. If you're running dash and not running this item, it better be because you're trying the Wombat strategy. This one, you play it and you gain 4 resources over 2 turns. This gives you 1 card strategy hands if you have, say, 1 card in Arsenal. If you have a Pummel in Arsenal and you have 1 Jumpstart in your hand, this gives you 2 resources. Jumpstart attacks for 1, leaving you 1 resource left. Hyperdriver gives you back a resource, meaning you have 2, and then you pummel. That's simple but works. Finally, our inventory. We have 3 copies of Big Bertha Red. It's just really there for the Illusionist matchup, and it's a decent pummel target. Oasis Respite is there for the Wizard Kano matchup, maybe in a kitchen table game if you're against Icelander, but really it's for Kano. Rise Above. This one's a little weird because it's a crazy idea I had, similar to Seek Horizon. This is for the Guardian / Brute matchup, and it's only there so you don't have items in your hand. That's it. Dash IO cannot play items from her hand at instant speed, only top of her deck. And the more ways you have putting cards on top of your deck, the more ways you have to play them. It's a jank idea, but hey, at least this card's being used for something. Adaptive plating's optional. It's just there in case we're up against, say, Bravo, or maybe Big Bertha. Big Betty? Bertha? No, sorry. Betsy. It blocks for 3 if you destroy an item. That's it. You could cut that out. Visitronic Model I, it's Arcane Barrier. You could use its effect to activate and modify top of your deck. I don't know why you would, but it's an option. You never know. Finally, I have here in the maybe pile, I have Crankshaft Red and Jumpstart Blue. You could run these if you were to cut something more expensive or something you don't have out of the deck. I'm not running them, but they're options. And that's really all of the deck. It's a really straightforward deck. And honestly, not that expensive either. as you can see in their pricing, if we were to sort by the cheapest printing and we go price high to low, the most expensive card in this deck is Fendel Spring Tunic, which has gone down in price quite a bit. The rest of the cards in this deck all cost less than $1, with the exception of Spark of Genius, Teklo Core, and High Octane. This is a really budget-friendly deck, and you could replace all the equipment with budget equipment, and you still have the core strategy. But yeah, that's my Pummeled with Data CC deck for the filthy casuals who want to go out there and have fun. I think I've spent enough time looking at a camera and screen. I've been the Jank Mechanologist. Go have fun. Go pummel your opponents. Try Dash.io. She's a great hero. My favorite hero. Give her a shot. My favorite CC hero, to be more specific. Have a good day. I'm going to go work on something else.